Good evening, everybody. My name is Leonard Jacobs. I'm the Interim Executive Director of the Jamaica Center for Arts and Learning. I'd like to welcome you all to JCAL Talks. This is our every other month conversation with thought leaders from Queens, about Queens, by Queens, and for Queens. I am here today with a very special guest. We are honored to have our Deputy Borough President, Rhonda Binda, with us this evening. And for those of you, now, if you don't know who Rhonda is, you should, and I don't know why you didn't. But for those of you who've been living under a rock, I'm going to ask Rhonda to give us a little bit of a background. You've had an amazing career. She's about to do amazing things for this borough. But for anyone who's not familiar with your work, I would just ask you to tell a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much, Leonard. It's such an honor to be here. I am a Queens kid. My parents had the typical immigrant experience, and when I think I was about 1 or 2, we moved from the Bronx to Queens to Jamaica and Queens Village. And so I grew up right here. And it's just been, I feel like the luckiest person because I grew up with so many incredible cultures and so much diversity that I was able to appreciate, just from, being, where I lived. And so I would often hang out outside of Broadway waiting for people to, see whether their partners would come or not and get free tickets or volunteer as an usher so that I can get a piece of the culture from time to time. And so it's so great to see institutions like this here in Queens that we can enjoy. And I'm so passionate about, in this role as Deputy Queens Borough President, being able to support and connect what we do here in Queens culturally with more people in the borough and outside the borough.
Awesome. I neglected to mention we are here live at the Jamaica Center for Arts and Learning in our 99-seat Black Box Theater. We are 500 feet apart, as you can see. Well, it's maybe not 500 feet, but close to that. As of April 2nd, some of the regulations will change. We'll begin to have some small audiences here safely, and we're really looking forward to that. And it's really part of a larger conversation about how we reopen, right? And it's getting pretty exciting. It's also a little bit nerve-wracking as well. But we're doing this series as well as all of the other programs here digitally and where possible safely in person here at JCAL because we want to celebrate the diversity of the community, all of the artists in the community and all of those that want to see their work and support them. So we've been doing a little pre-chat, and I think one of the first things we want to cover is Women's History Month. And so I thought you might have, since the 31st of March, but I thought we might want to have a conversation about Women's History Month and some of the things that have gone on at Borough Hall in celebration of that.
Thank you. Just last night, we hosted a 7-hour Gender Justice Summit, the first of its kind. And I really have to commend the foresight and the commitment from Queens Borough President Donovan Richards Jr., who has launched this new initiative of gender justice. We started making changes to our website to make sure that resources were more readily available, especially after seeing how hurt so many women have been economically, and also rise in domestic violence over the past year. And so we wanted to make sure that we are here for the women in the borough, and it was a great success. We honored some of our essential workers, and Queens Borough President is 100% in on making sure that we can keep this initiative consistent and successful. And so we'll be having regular events, and so please follow us in that regard. But I just have to applaud him for making it a priority to have women's voices heard, which is why he was so kind to have me come here today, and also appointing a woman as Deputy Borough President to make sure that they're being heard at the highest levels in government in New York City.
Absolutely, as they should be. And one day a woman mayor, I think?
I think we're one of the big cities that still hasn't had that in the United States. So that's, you never know. We have a vice president now. So
yes,
this
we
is
do.
An inflection point, I think, for politics. So
yes,
I think we're well on our way.
Look into my city and saying, woman mayor, now. Part of our pre-chat was sort of looking at Queens as a borough where the creative economy is very strong, and getting stronger. I think coming out of COVID, there will be a post-COVID at some point where we can maybe take a moment now, all of us, both introspectively and together, to talk about what the creative economy in Queens is going to look like as we get further into 21 and into 22 and into some sort of recovery. I know that the state of the creative economy and the sort of force multiplier of economic activity around the creative economy is very important to you and something that you've had a lot of experience with in other roles that you've played in your career. And I thought you might want to chat a little bit about the creative economy, kind of where it is, where it's going, what we in the arts, but also those of us who consume arts and culture and entertainment, what we should be thinking about in terms of the creative economy in Queens, and maybe what we can all start to do as we can start to do things.
Well, Leonard, I think you wear all three of those hats, right? You are a leader in one of the institutions, one of the most important institutions here, especially in not only in Queens, but especially for Southeast Queens. And so we thank you for that. And the borough president is committed to supporting our cultural institutions with capital to make sure that you're able to better serve and more widely serve the Queens community and beyond. And as a consumer, we are seeing that folks may not go back to the city to work, that we have found this new normal where we're using technology and YouTube and Zoom to be able to get our work done and get our messages across. So I think that we're going to move into an era where there's a better quality of life in terms that people can spend more time at home, spend more time on entertainment with their friends, with their family, and are looking for more localized venues. And then as artists, I have to tell you that, again, we are hoping that we see this rebound come big. I know everybody's hungry and thirsty to get back out there and to find that live entertainment. Yep. And so we're doing our best with working with not only our for-profit businesses and artists, but also we've created a nonprofit unit to help our smaller organizations learn how to thrive and be more sustainable and not as dependent on, the rich uncle of, the government, right. But that we can figure out ways for these organizations to, better maintain themselves when there's ups and downs, like, in the economy or, with this pandemic this past year.
One of the things that institutions like ours have been told for about a year is to get really used to the word hyperlocal. It's always been a question of how do you engage your community and the importance of being in dialogue with those who live in your community and those that you serve. But thinking about it as, I hate to put it this way, but sort of an economic transaction, but that's what it is, right? If there's an event, for example, at JCAL, but it could be at any arts organization in the borough, any cultural institution, it's the same concept as for any force multiplier. You're going to the restaurant, you're, taking the subway, you're going into the deli, all of that money gets spent. It's a question of, do you want to spend it within your neighborhood, within your community, within your borough, or are you going to make the schlep, that's a word, schlep, into Manhattan? And there are choices. I think when I was a kid growing up in Queens, it sometimes felt like there weren't choices, but there are now. And institutions like this one, I don't mean to turn this into a commercial, but it's true. Institutions like this one and other arts organizations across the borough offer a rich and substantive alternative that drives the economy. It drives jobs. When we were talking a little while ago, you mentioned a number of the number of jobs that the creative economy in New York, at least, I'm assuming we're talking New York City, how many there are. It's, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's thousands of jobs. There is no economy in New York City without arts and culture. I like to say arts, culture, and entertainment, because I think entertainment is, it depends on how you get what's on your cultural diet, But, go to the movies. When we are able to go to the movies, I guess we can now, go to the movies. But go to your local movie theater, I guess, is what we're saying.
Right, and we have such tremendous assets and institutions and venues here. And so we're so super excited because I think that between now and when things open, we're getting ready for it with Borough Hall and working together with you. In fact, about a year from now, you'll be hearing a lot more about Queens Rising, which is a partnership with our cultural organizations, with Queens College, with Queens Library. And this will be a one-of-a-kind event in Queens where we connect and we will make sure that we highlight all of these amazing places. We're going to create a passport, and you can get points for going to the restaurants, for hitting up your favorite venues, and then we'll have some sort of exchange for merchandise and that sort of thing. But we've seen, I saw this with the Queens Library a couple of years ago, and I thought it was so fun. So we're kind of cribbing that idea. But this is going to be a chance for us to really bring together all the artists that are in Queens and have them for a week-long festival that we really put the highlight how great they are and really put the showcase on them. So we're very much looking forward to the planning of that, and just more to come on that end. But you also mentioned movies. One of the things we're so thankful for is that during the pandemic, so many of our organizations, our cultural organizations, opened up for vaccination sites and for testing, and we're such great partners, and food pantries and you name it. So we at Borough Hall also, under the leadership of Phil Ballman, who is our director for culture and arts and tourism, he also, went to work and reached out to MoMI, to Rooftop Films, and to the New York Hall of Science, and put together a series of films for drive-ins, free drive-ins for the community. And this is going to continue this summer.
Oh, that's awesome.
We also, because of that, were able to host the premiere of Coming to America 2 a few weeks ago. And we're planning a few film festivals for the borough. And so we're so happy that your institutions were able to continue to engage and iterate and adapt. So I really, looking forward to what's happening upcoming with Queens Rising. There's just, it's gonna be, bigger and than anything I think that we've seen in terms of the collaboration of all of our groups across the borough.
We should give a shout out to Jeff Rosenstock at
Yes.
Queens College, because this, as I understand it,
Love
this
him.
is really Jeff's brainchild. JCAL is involved, pretty much, I think, all of the major cultural organizations in Queens are part of Queens Rising. This is June of 22. And one of the things that's been really exciting about it as a participant is we've all decided collectively it's not just institutions, it's independent artists, it's people who work on crafts, it's not just visual arts or performing arts, it's anything that you would decide fits the rubric of arts, culture, and entertainment, and let the independent artists determine what that is for themselves. And so we know that we're going to open up our doors for artists that are looking for a space to do a thing, and we will make space available. I don't know what the world will look like in June of 22, but we assume it will be more open than it is now, and we think it's very important. We have space, they have work they want to do, or work that they want to put out into the public, and we want to provide them with the platform for that. And that's, I think we feel like it's our responsibility, not just an opportunity, but our responsibility to do that. And what's been so great about Jeff's work in this area is that everybody's coming to the table to say the same thing. Everybody's like, I've got a space. I'm going to create time on a weekend. I've been, anyone who knows me, I've been running around for the last couple of months saying, this is our time here in Queens. Now, I don't want to speak in the pejorative about our friends in Brooklyn, but there are some people who might say, Brooklyn has had a moment and is continuing to ride that moment, but now is Queens' moment.
Right. The borough president says that we are the epicenter of culture.
Yeah.
And this is true. I mean, by any measure, this is, the most diverse place really in the world. And he believes that it is our duty to support our artists. And so we're also opening up the spaces in Borough Hall.
Oh, really?
And there will be much more activity at the Marshall Center. And, of course, we agree with you that artists and newer artists and aspiring artists should feel free to come to Queens.
Yep.
And to, give their all here, and we can help them grow and cultivate their talent. So many great people from the entertainment industry have already come from Queens.
Yep.
There's something in the water, I believe. And so we want to continue to, to live that brand. And I agree with you that this is going to be unlike anything anyone's seen in the city. And Brooklyn and other boroughs, they're fantastic.
Yep.
We have our uniqueness to it, and a special type of diversity that I think that there's so many communities that are now coming out and using their voices more.
Yep.
We want to celebrate that and celebrate the diversity. And this will be our flagship, I think, moment.
It's going to be really exciting. And it's going to be there's going to be a lot of people participating in this. There's going to be a lot to do. And we didn't talk about this, but I'd like to ask you the question anyway, because I know that you know something about, obviously, economics and marketing and consumer habits. Years ago, when I was working for the city of New York, there was a cultural institution in another part of the borough that was experiencing an issue where they felt that people were reluctant to come across the 59th Street Bridge. Mm. This particular institution has incredible content. Mm-hmm. But there was this sort of moment, I think, coming out of the recession, people were, a little bit cautious with their pocketbooks. And I remember being in a meeting where someone of stature in that part of the borough said, what do we have to do to get people from Manhattan or Brooklyn to, come across that bridge or to come across that land bridge and whatever? How do you think that works? And I'll give you another example. I have friends who live in Manhattan who'll say, oh yeah, I'll go out to Queens, making it sound like it's New South Wales. It's
right.
not, it's Queens.
We're giving them their passport next year, so
right. And so how do you get people? It's
that connectivity piece of it that's so important, that the borough president is determined to make sure that we can make these institutions more accessible, transportation-wise. And so one of the first things that he's doing is supporting the bike lane on 59th Street Bridge. So it'll be easier than ever.
I'm glad I mentioned the bridge.
You don't even need a car now. And we're looking at more bridges, to add bike lanes to, connect. So part of Queens Rising will be working with shuttle companies, working with the MTA on making it just demystifying getting around the borough. I mean, I've heard stories before also with people having a hard time finding that exact address. It's a big, beautiful place. And we are constantly making improvements transportation-wise, infrastructure-wise, so that we can have that better connectivity. Because there is sometimes that I think that we're not a grid here, and then sometimes our institutions we're very close here right now to for the biggest transportation hubs in the city. It's just how do we then work with the MTA on putting the signage, letting people know, and they started this a few years ago. So I think we need a lot more of that. And we're also, of course, working with NYC and Company. Right. The borough president is joining their board this year. Oh. So he's been having great conversations with Fred Dixon around how we can, with people not traveling as much, how can we better, encourage people to see what else is within their city.
People have to, we're talking about hyperlocal, and that's important. But people also need to get out and explore their city. We're a big city. We're a city of 8.5 or 9 million people who all know each other through 4 other people or 5 other people, right? So it's not that difficult. It's like, get on that train. It moves. You can get there. I should interrupt myself to say something very important, which is, if you have any questions, we would love to have your questions. Put them in the chat. If you're watching this on YouTube, put your questions in the chat. If you're watching this on Facebook, put your questions in the chat. My laptop is on. We've gotten a question or two. I will ask them, but please give us more questions. We'd love to hear from you. We also wanted to talk about COVID and all of the testing sites. I got my first shot just this past Friday because a new site opened in Long Island City, not too far from where I live. So and I think the last 4 days nationally, we've topped 3 million shots. And so we're going to keep pushing that average up.
Right.
You know, so it's amazing that so many places have opened their doors and made themselves accessible. I want to touch on two things. One is, how do we deal with vaccine hesitancy? We didn't talk about this, but I've been thinking about it because I've had a couple of conversations with people that I know and love and respect, and they've got some concerns. And I found myself needing very much to respect where they were coming from. I don't want to say who and what, but I found myself listening, trying to put myself in their shoes. Once I am over 50, so once I was able to get the shot, I decided to go and do that. But I don't feel the need to make people feel, you know, bad if they want to wait. Does the borough president have a particular point of view, or do you have a particular point of view about that? I just wonder, as people, as citizens.
We are certainly encouraging everyone to get tested.
Yeah.
I think that the alternative is a lot worse. And, you know, there's this sometimes distrust of government that, you know, permeates in situations like this. But this is why we are so appreciative of our cultural institutions and other libraries and, you know, other institutions and religious institutions becoming partners. And that's is what we've been advocating for. I think initially, this goes back to our discussion about empowering our nonprofits. And I think initially that the vaccination sites were not necessarily in, you know, literally the culturally competent places. And so that we're able to partner. And I'll give you an example, the New York Hall of Science. They're an incredible institution, and I used to serve as a board member there. They really did their outreach to the community and created a website that had resources in English and Spanish, and they held most of their events in town halls. This is an offshoot effort during the pandemic to make sure that resources were getting to in and around that community. And so, you know, I really can't thank the institutions enough, but the message is the same. You know, please get tested, please get vaccinated. We have to, like you said, we have a big city. We are, you know, we like being in close quarters with one another. We want to be back in here in theaters together. And it's not really, even if you're having questions about yourself, think about your family, your friends. Think about them and keeping them safe. And if you feel like it's a little bit risky, you know, think about, you know, the risk of, you know, the alternative and, you know, passing COVID on to someone else, or, you know, you yourself becoming deathly ill. And I just think that the side effects can, you know, so far, there have been some, you know, obviously with any type of, you know, drug or medication, there will be, you know, a few cases that are outliers. But for the most part, I think people who are getting vaccinated are no longer contracting COVID.
That's right. I think the numbers are about to change. It was interesting to watch the bar, because obviously we had that terrible spike over the darkest part of the winter, and then it came down, and now it's been sort of wavering. And I had read an article recently that was looking at the process in Israel, which is per capita ahead of any other country in terms of vaccinating the population.
Yeah, they're amazing.
And they had a little bit of an uptick until they hit 25% of the population, and then it really dropped. And what they're seeing in other countries, including this one, is that in the run-up to the 25%, the bar sort of wavers a little bit. And it looks like we're going to experience something similar, which gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, that's good. I did get my vaccination shot, my last one on Friday. The borough president did go on Saturday. And, you know, I'm already getting excited about being out and about.
We got to get back to life, you know, if we can, we have to get back to life. I wanted to cover a little bit more about small business. We were having a great conversation earlier that I thought we could revisit. I know you talked about a new unit that Phil is heading up out of Borough Hall to deal with smaller nonprofits, I guess individual entrepreneurs. Would that be fair to say?
So Phil's also expanded his portfolio to include tourism. So that's some economic development there.
Right.
Susie Tannenbaum is actually spearheading, and I forget the number of years she's been at Borough, but she knows almost every single group and cultural group around the borough. She's spearheading the nonprofit unit. Yes, but with respect to small businesses, there's so much that we're doing now under Sharon Anderson, our economic development director, and her team, that including partnering soon with a number of economic development organizations around the city to provide, build capacity. The same that we're doing for nonprofits, it's the same for small businesses. As you know, we're helping facilitate grants and loans, but artists, so many fall into this category as well.
Right.
I think the trope of the starving artist is something really of the past. I mean, we have artists that are working at Lincoln Center, right? So they're not necessarily the same type of person that you would want to put in low-income housing, but we do need artist housing. We do need healthcare for artists. We do need labor rights for artists. And we want them to be able to have that dignity, to be able to get these resources and support so that they can do what they do. And so I know that this is working with our land use department, that this is something that Phil and I have been talking about, and the borough president wants to see happen. That came out of his transition team, that we want to have more support across these areas for artists in the years to come.
Well, earlier you used a phrase, and it warmed my heart. I've never heard a politician use this phrase. This was amazing, and I am your fan now forever, because you said dignity for artists. I mean, that was the most beautiful phrase I've heard in the last 20 years. And I think all of those things go into how we demonstrate that artists are entitled to dignity, right? It's funny, I was a starving artist once, or at least I thought I was, or I fashioned myself as one. But in a society that is worthy of their work, we take care of all of us.
100%.
Right. I was very glad a moment ago when you were talking about affordable housing. The reason I grew up in Queens is because my parents back in the day were looking for affordable housing and found it in Queens. And most people I know I sound like a commercial, but I mean, it's,
Keep going. I love it.
Right? Exactly. Awesome. Checks in the mail. But I mean, seriously, if once you get to know the city, you begin to understand that comparatively speaking, Queens tends to be more affordable. I don't know if there are any plans or programs that you might or might not feel comfortable talking about with respect to affordable housing, but I still think the borough generally is more affordable to live in. I mean, certainly more than Manhattan, certainly more than Brooklyn. Again, not to speak about our friends in Manhattan and Brooklyn in the pejorative, but those are just economic numbers.
Certainly for the space that you get here. Absolutely.
Right.
And there's so much green space.
Yeah.
I mean, and we have the best food. So, I mean, why would you want to go anywhere else?
This is true. And it's also true, you were talking about something earlier, there are 200 languages spoken in the borough. We have a program here at JCAL called Building Equity, which is really about creating a platform for all of the various cultures, mostly in Southeast Queens, but not entirely, to be able to see their cultures reflected in our content. So if it's on stage or if it's on screen, the idea is to have work, content, activity that is reflective of what they're looking to see or what they're looking to consume or what they recognize. This idea that we're all in a big tent together, that people ought not be marginalized. And that includes their cultural heritage. And that is, sorry to get political here, but after the last 4 years, it is ever so much more imperative that we all make the statement that one's cultural heritage is your right, and it is important that we all educate ourselves and engage with that and celebrate that. And as a cultural institution, that's right in our mission. That's exactly the kind of thing that we should be doing. So when I learned, I knew that there were dozens and dozens of languages. I didn't know that there's like an exact number, and it's a little bit over 200. And it's like, now I want to know what they all are.
Well, maybe we shouldn't. We have a lunch and learn. We started an employee engagement committee, and with one of the top linguists I think that's
Really?
upcoming. Yes, we should set something up, or I'll set something up for him, or join our webinar.
Oh, let's do it.
He can
Let's do it.
invite
Or
you.
we'll promote it. We have some comments and some questions. So I don't know how you feel about the first one. I don't know very much about this, but I'm going to ask it. And if we
Sure.
don't,
Sure,
if we don't
that's
know
fine.
anything, you'll forgive us.
That's
But
fine.
there's a question about non-fungible tokens or cryptocurrency-based art.
Ooh, that's such a fun question for me. I mean, I did tell you that I had a
Please,
tech background.
because I got nothing. So,
That's such a great question. I don't think anybody can doubt the importance of technology.
right, right.
Now, especially after the pandemic.
Yeah.
And what really, going back to the economics of art, one of the areas that I always had trouble with, especially with visual art. Visual artists, they don't get to see the royalties of their pieces as they're sold from hand to hand and from house to house. And there's now a solution potentially to democratize this, where you can use cryptocurrency and blockchain technology so that it's treated more like music. And they're in that regard in terms of the royalties. And so I think this is a very interesting space. And I actually listened into a few, and I think this is an incredible topic. We're already planning next year at Queens Rising to have a panel about this.
Oh, cool.
Yes,
Cool.
yes.
I did not know that, but I'm glad I'm channeling the
So
future.
there are going to be a lot of really great sort of academic discussions too, in addition to all the fun and entertainment. So this is something that we are looking at to cover next year in more depth. But this area is becoming much more. I just think it's becoming much more popular, especially since recently there was a piece of art that was sold at a city. Yes, so we're tracking it for here in Queens, and as we look at as being the epicenter of culture, we're really looking at leading in all of these new innovative areas as well.
Is cryptocurrency, do you think, something that the average person can understand and participate in? Do you think it's heading in that direction?
It is, absolutely. And I'm a little biased. I actually developed a couple courses. I teach at CUNY, and I have a few courses that are open. They're in the OEM. They're somewhere on the CUNY website on blockchain and cryptocurrency. But I do think so. Again, it's about democratizing access to capital and being able to, what they've done now is broken it up. Even just one. To be able to, unit of it to be able to so that you can buy pieces and, still accrue, the value will accrue. Like
a Bitcoin, like a piece of
Yes.
a Bitcoin. Because a Bitcoin is not like a thing. Can you hold a Bitcoin in your hand?
It's more of like an ephemeral sort of, it exists in the ether. It's in the form of some sort of code or number.
Oh, wow.
And then you have a key to be able to access that. And so that's the secure part about making sure that you can track and follow, because the blockchain itself can secure the intellectual property rights of that artist because it's in a secure place over time, so that they can continue to benefit.
And so that deals with the royalties issue, because now the artist's interests are being protected, basically. Awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think I think things will move in that direction, and there are already some galleries there are a few websites out there that you can find where they're beginning to sell. And it started with maybe just gifts and digital art. But I think this is something that will make sense for the entire industry.
What I love about this idea of digital art is that really goes to the idea that anybody can be an artist, right? I mean, I guess I would say that. I don't know if people
That's
feel
generous
that way.
Coming from a critic. I love that.
We're not supposed to talk about my years as a theater critic. That's ancient history.
I love that, though. Yes, encourage, because a lot of what we're seeing will be automated in this world. And it's the creative arts, that is the jobs of the future are also in this industry.
Sure. Queens is also really tech friendly. I mean, that's, and I know you know all about that. And I think it's only going to increase, again, as we come out of this period of time. I mean, the infrastructure is being built or is already here. And we're sort of ripe for that, it seems to me.
Yeah, we're pretty, I think we're pretty wired. I think that our trouble is the access and the cost. And so Borough Hall is looking at closing those gaps. Because luckily, like you said, that a lot of the infrastructure is here. We have the assets, but they're underutilized. So we were trying to put that connectivity together, and once that's there, I think that the sky's the limit.
So we have a question that's sort of related to this from Andrew Manshell, and he writes, "What can we do to?" Thank you, Ben. "What can we do to let the broader creative community know about the great spaces to rehearse and make art in downtown Jamaica?" He's very generous, referred to JCAL JPAC, but also Chapel of the Sisters and the York Performing Arts Center.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So this is part, I think in the lead up to Queens Rising, we are, sort of not necessarily dusting off, because I know you guys were super active during the pandemic, but we are going to allow everyone to rediscover all of these amazing spaces. And we should do some sort of open house for artists, and maybe do it like a few times a quarter until we can, see that they see what the opportunities are, and invite artists from all over the tri-state area to come and to, see what's available here in Queens.
I love that. Now my brain's working.
The museums already do it from time to time, right? They have these open houses.
Yeah. I mean, also in Long Island City, there's a long tradition of open studios and things like that. I wonder, how do we do that in this part of Queens? Can we not only use many of the spaces that were being referred to in that question, but also maybe non-traditional spaces, or maybe merchant spaces that are going fallow at the moment that need to be reactivated for some period of time.
And that's exactly what I did when I was here at the Jamaica BID.
I thought you might reference that.
And it was through partnership, right? We partnered with No Longer Empty to help curate the space, and it was a win-win for everyone, because it was rented shortly thereafter because of all the foot traffic. And we want to see the same thing happen to the existing spaces that we have in our cultural institution. So I know this works. And I just think it's a matter of, once we, get past the trouble of not being able to really congregate, let's figure out a way to have people remember the spaces here. And I have to thank Mr. Manshell for his dedicated work over the years in downtown Jamaica, and he continues that great work right now, working more with technology, but it's all connected, like we said. And so I think the leadership that you all have here, with your chair, Michelle Stoddard, and the folks on your board. I know that you all will probably, because you've been active, will probably wind up being a leader in this area, because you haven't really stopped. It seems that you've taken a lot of what you were going to do in person, and kept it up and iterated and adapted well. And so we're looking for institutions like yours to help with this, to come to the table and to help with Queens Rising. But I don't think it'll be that difficult to put together some sort of open house at some point. I think that's a great idea. I
love that idea. And also, there are so many independent artists that need space to show.
Yeah.
There's going to be, we hope, I don't want to say where yet because it may not be for me to break this news, but there is a street festival that is fairly well known that I understand will be coming back. And we were approached specifically to, could we identify 5, 10, a dozen artists who might just want to show their work? If they could do some commerce, that would be great. But it's about exposure.
Right. And with the open streets, there's been a little bit of a challenge in managing that process. And so I know that the borough president has called on Department of Transportation to step up a bit to help. But that's exactly it. Work with those who know the artists. We're so grateful for the open spaces, but we just have to better partner and connect so that it can be even more of a success.
It does feel like the DOT is listening, because I know that when the open culture, they ought to be listening. I know that when the open culture legislation passed and the initial set of streets were announced, all of us here in South Queens were like, hello, right? And now there seems to be a certain
They let us
flex.
add a few more, right? They
Yeah.
came back. I think they're listening more. I feel that people are a little bit more aware of diversity issues in general. Since this past year, and I think that the agencies have been more flexible,
Yep.
which is really great. I mean, but it's up to us if we like that flexibility. It's up to us to put the pressure on to make sure that we keep it that way, whether it's outdoor seating, open streets, open culture,
Right.
and that we put their feet to the fire on making sure that the communities of color, like here, are getting their fair share.
And there's so much richness here. I mean, that's the thing about it's the entire borough, and I say that as a Queens boy, but also, I mean, I've spent a lot of time, and I went to high school not far from here. There is so much richness in this part of the borough, and very often, I think in times past, it's been overlooked. The more you get to know the community, the more you understand. Not just, we talk about diversity, and there's a lot of different ways to think about diversity, but as artists and as arts administrators, it's what kind of work do you do? Where have you shown your work? Who's supporting you? Who's purchasing your work, which is very often part of the discussion, and why? Why do they collect your particular kind of work as opposed to somebody else's? Or, there's a tremendous tradition in this part of the borough around dance. And that needs to be celebrated. We need to figure out, you were very kind a moment ago talking about the fact that we've been doing a lot of work. It is true. We never closed, other than physically, for a period of time like everybody else. But once we were sort of back up and running, it was like, well, we have sorry for the shameless plug, but we have an annual dance festival, which is funded in part by the National Endowment for the Arts. And we really had two choices. Give the money back to the federal government, which felt like a poor choice, or figure out how to do a dance festival online. All 11 companies are Queens-based that applied to be in the festival and were accepted into the festival. So it wasn't like it was some far-flung dance company from another state. These are our friends and neighbors and our family going through the same thing that we're all going through at the same time. So how can we use technology? And so we used technology. These choreographers were born to be choreographers and not filmmakers. But in this moment of reinvention, they were all completely game to reinvent themselves as filmmakers as well as choreographers, to think about their work filmically or cinematically. And they did. And the result was amazing. So yes, we want to have a situation where you can come into a theater or be outside and see the performance, which is the way it was intended to be created. But then we can also capture it and stream it and show it and promote it. And eventually, what would be great is to translate that into additional remuneration for the artists, which is what we're about. And that's through the magic of technology, and that's why we didn't close. Because what alternative is there?
And do you not reach record number of people with the
You're very kind. We did. We did. We had over 2,000 people see the way. It's very kind of you to say that.
Well, just to show that, it works, right?
Yeah.
And for being that example. And, creative people tend to be creative. And I've seen some really great ways that they adapt. And we don't have to go far here in Queens to find amazing artists. It's just, they're at they're just a block over, and then a block over is another, great
right.
culture, and they have another set of incredible artists. So it's to go back to hyperlocal, this is the time, I think, for us to really build them up, build their capacity, give them that stage, and then we'll be able to celebrate together at Queens Rising about a year from now. And
Jeff Rosenstock has gotten such great advertising out of this conversation. That's great. I just want to remind everyone, if you have a question or if you have a comment or something that you would like to say, please feel free. And as we begin to wind ourselves down, I wanted to ask you about the areas of your work now as Deputy Borough President that you are most passionate about. I mean, you're passionate about a lot of things. I got that in the first 5 minutes of our conversation, and in the times that we've spoken before that. There's a lot of work to do, but there's a lot of energy coming out of Borough Hall right now. It's
totally.
palpable, you
Totally.
know? What are you like, if someone were to say, what are the 3 things or 2 things or 4 things, pick the number of your preference, that you are most passionate about?
Well, I think it's about, first of all, rebuilding the economy. A year ago, the unemployment rate in Queens was only 3% last March, right? So it's rebuilding the economy, getting people back to doing what they love to do, and getting people back in the workforce, but in a more humane way, you know, in a way where I think we've seen that there's more flexibility that employers can have. And so there, you know, certain groups of people that we would like to see more included in that economy. For example, people who are disabled. And so on our agenda is to look at how can we become in Queens and support a more inclusive economy. The infrastructure, of course, because without that foundation, whether you consider infrastructure to be the roads or transportation or fiber and high-speed internet, that without that's sort of the foundation that we can all build on and be creative on top of. And so this is you know, another huge priority, and we're moving very quickly in this area thanks to the Borough President's leadership on transportation issues. And then there's this, you know, a few areas of new opportunity. I would say, this is kind of cheating, but I'll put them together in kind of a basket, right? So we've, you know, started a gender justice unit. Also, we're also building out a youth unit, civic engagement, and one of my favorites also is a sustainability task force. So we're going to be looking at not only becoming a more inclusive Queens, but also a healthier Queens, a greener Queens, and part of that is also the beautification of Queens. And so there are, you know, certain ways that we look at development, and we look at inclusive development, and we talked about that earlier about having affordable housing. I don't think I answered that question. The Borough President is committed to having 2,000 new units of affordable housing this year, and we're well on track for that. And you know, we're working on legislation to include in our artist housing as well. But in terms of the borough itself, you know, creating more green spaces, making sure that when we're building, that we're in harmony with the environment and not harming it. And so that's, you know, these newer initiatives, that also includes a tech initiative. These are, you know, the newer initiatives are also pretty exciting for me to see what comes out of those. And so, you know, I very much appreciate you allowing us a chance to showcase some of those things. And of course, everything arts and culture and tourism related, I believe really falls under economic development as well.
Oh, I do too.
Because this is what entices people to come here. And like you said, spend here. And the multiplier effect from that just really benefits everybody here in Queens.
Well, I really want to thank you for coming by and for your time and your, listen, it was our honor. You know, I think you're going to do great things for this borough. And it's, as I said before, it's sort of the shameless borough plug, but it's our time. And it's really exciting to see you in this leadership position with the vision that you're outlining. Is it okay if someone needed to reach out to you with an idea? Is there a proper, preferable way for someone to reach you at Borough Hall?
Well, we have our information on the website, and it can be an idea, it can be an issue, a problem. Please come to us. I mean, we're here for you. And our number is 718-286-3000. And then you can usually find most of our emails on our website as well. Follow us on Twitter, Queens BP. I think it's BP. I think it's BP Donovan Richards or Donovan Richards BP. I think there's a Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We have a YouTube channel that has everything that he does, all searchable. So if you missed yesterday, you can, and you have an extra 7 hours, so you can, you know, obviously break it up. If you missed part of yesterday, you can always tune in there. And so again, we're using technology to reach as many people as we can.
I want you to know that Nicole wrote Guyanese Girls Rock.
Oh, great. Awesome. Yes. Borough President was, very supportive of the Guyanese community and proud to be a Guyanese immigrant American myself.
So I think on that note, I think that's a perfect way to wrap it up. It just popped in. That's a lovely comment. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you. Yes, we're the second largest diaspora here in Queens.
Is there a particular? Is it this part of the borough, or?
I think we're sort of scattered all around. I grew up in this area.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This
was a pleasure and an honor.
I mean, I watched with bated breath your first session. I ran home and wanted to watch it, and you and Melva. And then I was so honored when Dawn reached out. So thank you so much for allowing us to share some of what we're doing.
And we'll do this again. We'll visit again. We'll have coffee or whatever.
Please,
Whatever.
yes. Let's keep the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.